I never thought anyone would care, Martha Jenkins whispered to herself as the dust storm swept across the open plains, scattering tumbleweeds like fragments of forgotten dreams. She stumbled along the dry creek bed, the soles of her worn boots scraping against sun-baked earth, and the wind tugged at the threadbare shawl wrapped around her shoulders, carrying with it the scent of sage and distant pine. Her cabin lay in ruins half a mile behind her, roof caved in, walls leaning like they might collapse under their own weight, and she hadn't eaten more than a crust of bread in 3 days. The sky above was painted in deep shades of orange and gray, clouds rolling across the horizon like slow-moving waves, promising either shelter or more hardship. A sudden movement caught her eye, and she froze, squinting through the haze. 2 small figures appeared on a nearby ridge, their dark hair tangled with dust, eyes wide and alert. The twin girls, Lila and Lyra Redhawk, stood with a quiet authority that seemed far beyond their years, their moccasins barely making a sound on the rocky ground. Martha instinctively crouched, but there was no threat in their posture, only a careful watchfulness. One of them stepped forward, her hand extended slightly, holding a small bundle of cloth and food, the simple gesture of sharing cutting through the tension in the air. The other mirrored her motion, offering a tiny wooden cup of water, condensation glinting in the fading sunlight. Martha's chest tightened, a warmth spreading through her that she hadn't felt in weeks, as she accepted the offerings with trembling hands. The girls did not speak at first, only studied her with solemn, earnest expressions, their eyes reflecting a trust that seemed both fragile and profound. She noticed the slight sway of the canyon walls around them, the way shadows stretched and merged with the deep crevices, and the distant echo of a creek trickling unseen, a subtle rhythm that matched her own heartbeat. The wind shifted, brushing against her face, carrying the faint smell of smoked wood from a fire far off, and in that instant, Martha felt an inexplicable connection to this land, to these children, to something larger than herself. She knelt beside them, brushing dust from the bundle, examining the tiny pieces of bread and the clear water, and a faint smile broke across her weathered face. The girls finally spoke, their voices soft yet resolute, words that seemed to hold the weight of generations. "We want you to have a home," one whispered, "and our father needs a bride." Martha's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and disbelief washing over her, the simple phrase twisting her understanding of kindness and fate. She looked at the horizon again, where the first stars began to blink through the deepening twilight, and felt a stirring of hope she hadn't dared to feel in years. The girl's small hands reached for hers, gripping gently, guiding her across the dusty plain toward the outline of an old, abandoned house tucked between 2 jagged hills, the wind carrying their laughter softly, as if blessing the path ahead. Each step Martha took was heavy with anticipation and wonder, the earth beneath her boots uneven but grounding, each rock and clump of sand marking the journey from despair to possibility. Shadows lengthened, the canyon walls glowing faintly in the last light, and the distant hoot of an owl punctuated the silence, a solitary witness to the quiet miracle unfolding. Martha's heart, once hollow and guarded, began to beat with a steady rhythm of trust and curiosity, the small acts of generosity from these 2 children weaving an invisible bridge to a future she had never imagined. She breathed in the night air, tasting the metallic tang of the desert, the sweetness of sage, and the subtle warmth of shared humanity, knowing that each careful step forward was more than a walk toward a house. It was a passage into a life she had almost given up on, and into a story that was only beginning. The old house stood quietly among the jagged hills, its weathered boards glowing faintly under the first light of morning, and Martha Jenkins hesitated at the threshold, her eyes tracing the patterns of dust and sunlight dancing across the wooden floorboards. The twin girls, Lila and Lyra Redhawk, remained close by, their small hands brushing lightly against the rough walls as if to steady themselves and Martha at the same time. She stepped inside, each creak of the floor echoing like a soft drumbeat in the stillness, and smelled the faint scent of cedar and earth, carried through the cracked windows by the gentle morning breeze. Dust motes floated lazily in the beams of light, shimmering as if tiny stars had been captured within the room, and Martha felt an unexpected calm settle over her. a stark contrast to the storm and chaos of the night before. The girls led her to a corner where a small bundle of blankets had been carefully laid out, neatly folded and smelling faintly of herbs. And Martha could feel the thoughtfulness behind the arrangement, a silent welcome and a gentle invitation to stay. She knelt to touch the soft fabric, tracing her fingers over the subtle patterns, her mind recalling the long days and colder nights she had endured alone, and a warmth blossomed in her chest at the realization that kindness could arrive quietly, without fanfare or expectation. Lila tilted her head, dark eyes meeting Martha's, and spoke softly, her voice steady yet filled with reverence for the woman she had been observing from afar. "We wanted you to see that you are not alone." Lyra stepped closer, her small hand brushing against Martha's arm in a comforting gesture, and the words felt like a bridge, connecting Martha to a community and a sense of belonging that had been absent for far too long. Outside, the wind whispered through the canyon, carrying the scent of sagebrush and distant pine, and the soft chirping of early birds created a gentle melody that harmonized with the quiet heartbeat of the house. Martha arose slowly, taking in the space, noticing the care in every corner, the small touches of home that the girls had provided without speaking a word, and she felt her own shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. She followed them to the kitchen area where a simple breakfast had been arranged, bowls of porridge and fresh water set upon a wooden table that had clearly been repaired and polished with attention and patience. The girls motioned for her to sit, and Martha did so cautiously, yet with a sense of trust growing between them. As she ate, the twins spoke in soft tones, sharing stories of their father and the lands he had once tended, of the small traditions that had persisted through the years, and Martha listened, absorbing not only the words but the feeling of care, continuity, and respect woven into their speech. The light outside shifted as the sun climbed higher, illuminating the walls and casting patterns that seemed almost intentional, as if the house itself was alive with welcome. Martha felt her gaze soften, meeting the twins' eyes with a smile that was hesitant yet genuine, a small acknowledgement that she understood and accepted the quiet offering of home and trust. She glanced back toward the hills and the open plains, feeling both the expanse of the world and the intimacy of the room around her. And in that moment, Martha realized that the smallest acts of attention, of generosity without expectation, could transform not only a place but the heart of those who inhabit it, and she breathed deeply, letting the calm, the warmth, and the unspoken promise of community fill her entirely. The morning sun climbed higher over the canyon, painting the walls with streaks of gold and amber, and Martha Jenkins rose from the wooden table, her hands lingering on the warm bowl that still smelled faintly of cinnamon and oats. Lila and Lyra Redhawk moved with quiet precision, clearing the plates and stacking them neatly while glancing occasionally at Martha, their expressions a mixture of pride and cautious hope. She stepped outside onto the small porch, the rough boards warm under her bare feet, and felt the gentle wind carrying the scents of dry grass and distant pine sap. The canyon stretched endlessly before her, jagged rocks and twisted junipers casting long shadows across the cracked earth. Yet in the shelter of this house and the presence of the twin girls, the vastness no longer felt lonely. Lila held a small basket filled with herbs and dried fruits, setting it on the porch railing, and Lyra brought out a blanket, soft and thick, folded carefully so Martha could take it for the cooler night ahead. They did not speak much, only moved with a deliberate grace, their quiet gestures conveying more than words ever could. Martha knelt briefly to inspect the herbs, inhaling the aromatic blend of sage, mint, and lavender, realizing how simple acts of thoughtfulness could carry a profound weight. As she straightened, a soft breeze lifted strands of her gray-streaked hair across her face, and she noticed how the girl's eyes reflected the light, bright and unyielding, as if holding secrets of the land and its history within them. She reached out, brushing a dust mote from Lyra's shoulder, and for a brief moment their hands met. A connection formed across age, experience, and heritage. The day unfolded slowly, each movement deliberate and measured, the quiet hum of distant wildlife punctuating the silence. Martha watched the girls gather small stones and paint symbols along the edges of the porch, the designs subtle yet intricate, imbued with meaning she could feel without understanding fully. She felt herself learning, absorbing not just the gestures but the intentions behind them, the careful blending of respect, tradition, and invitation into every action. The wind shifted again, teasing the ends of the girl's dark braids, and Martha took a deep breath, tasting the warmth of sun-baked earth, the freshness of creek water, and the subtle spice of the herbs at her fingertips. Lila finally spoke, her voice low and certain. "This place is ours to share with those who walk gently." And Lyra nodded, adding only a soft affirmation, the simplicity of their words carrying the weight of trust. Martha's gaze wandered across the room and then out to the canyon, feeling a profound stillness settle in her chest, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and awe at the unfolding kindness around her. She understood that each deliberate act, each quiet gesture of thoughtfulness, had built a bridge between her world and theirs, spanning generations, heritage, and hardship. The porch creaked gently underfoot as she shifted, and she realized that the house, the wind, the canyon, and these two small figures had quietly transformed her sense of possibility, of home, and of belonging, weaving a new rhythm into the fabric of her days where the simplest actions carried the weight of miracles yet to be revealed. The afternoon sun filtered through the cracks in the cabin walls, casting long, shifting patterns across the wooden floor as Martha Jenkins moved carefully among the furniture, her hands tracing the smooth edges of a table and the rough grain of a chair, each touch grounding her in the present and in the gentle reality that this place could truly be a home. Lila and Lyra Redhawk worked alongside her in quiet harmony, their small feet barely making a sound on the floorboards as they arranged the blankets, baskets of food, and small trinkets they had brought, the soft rustle of fabric and the faint scent of dried herbs filling the air with a calm intimacy. Outside, the wind carried the distant notes of a creek meandering through the canyon, the water glinting like liquid silver in. The sunlight, and the occasional rustle of a bird taking flight punctuated the stillness, creating a rhythm that matched Martha's own slowing heartbeat. She paused near a window, looking out across the jagged landscape, noticing how the golden light danced across the rocks and scrubby juniper trees, highlighting the small patches of green that stubbornly clung to life in the arid terrain, and she felt a sense of awe at the resilience of the land, mirrored in the quiet strength of the twin girls who had guided her here. Lila knelt beside a small wooden crate, placing carefully gathered firewood inside, and Lyra adjusted a bundle of fresh herbs, the action meticulous and deliberate, each movement showing both respect for the space and an unspoken trust in Martha's presence. Martha's hands moved in tandem, helping lift a small basket of dried fruits onto the shelf, and in doing so, she felt the invisible threads of connection weaving between her and these children, the care in their gestures echoing the generosity she had shown them the night before, creating a bond unspoken yet deeply felt. The sunlight shifted subtly, casting warm tones across the walls, and Martha took a moment to breathe deeply, inhaling the mixture of pine, sage, and the earthy aroma of sun-baked wood, letting it fill her senses and settle any lingering apprehension. The girls spoke softly in turn, explaining the small routines of the household, the ways in which they tended to the land, and the significance of the objects they had placed about, their voices carrying a quiet wisdom, a patience that made Martha lean closer to listen, absorbing not only the words but the care behind them. She smiled, feeling a weight lift from her chest as she realized that her solitary years and hardships were giving way to a new chapter, one shaped not by survival alone, but by connection, generosity, and shared responsibility. Each corner of the cabin, each careful placement of a blanket or basket, told a story of thoughtfulness and trust, and Martha began to see herself not just as a guest, but as a participant in this quiet tapestry of community and care. She moved to the door, stepping onto the porch once more, letting the sunlight warm her face as she looked across the canyon and felt the expanse of the world open in a way that no longer seemed daunting but inviting, filled with possibilities and the soft promise that kindness, once given, could ripple outward and shape not just a single day, but a lifetime of days to come. The late afternoon sun cast long, warm shadows across the canyon floor, and Martha Jenkins stood at the edge of the porch, her gaze sweeping over the rugged landscape, noticing how the golden light kissed the tops of jagged rocks and illuminated the sparse patches of grass that clung stubbornly to the dry earth. Lila and Lyra Redhawk moved around the yard with quiet purpose, gathering small bundles of firewood and arranging them neatly near the cabin, their movements precise, deliberate, and filled with an unspoken sense of ceremony. Martha followed them slowly, feeling the weight of the day settle on her shoulders, yet also a new sense of belonging stirring within her chest, a warmth that she had not known for many years. She knelt beside a small, flat rock, brushing away the dust and placing a collection of smooth pebbles in a line, mimicking the careful gestures of the twins as they had arranged their herbs and blankets earlier. The wind shifted, carrying the subtle scent of sage and the distant sound of a flowing creek, and Martha breathed deeply, letting the aromas and the quiet rhythm of the land fill her senses and ease the tension that had lingered within her. Lila glanced toward her, her eyes bright with a gentle pride, and offered a small smile, which Martha returned with a growing sense of trust and ease. Lyra approached with a small wicker basket, filled with dried fruits and nuts, setting it carefully on the ground and gesturing for Martha to share, the simplicity of the act echoing the kindness that had brought them together. Martha sat beside them, lifting the basket and tasting the modest offerings, savoring not only the flavors but the intent behind them, the thoughtfulness, the care, and the quiet celebration of giving without expectation. The canyon walls glowed in the waning light, the shadows stretching and shifting, and Martha watched as the girls led her toward a small patch of wildflowers growing along the edge of a rocky slope, the blooms bright against the muted browns and reds of the earth, delicate yet resilient. She knelt among them, letting her fingers brush against the petals, feeling a connection to the land and to the children who had guided her to this place of safety and welcome. The sun dipped lower, the sky now painted with streaks of rose and lavender, and Martha felt a deep sense of peace settle over her as she stood, brushing dirt from her hands and glancing back at the cabin where blankets, baskets, and carefully arranged belongings spoke silently of care, trust, and home. The girls stood nearby, their dark eyes watching her, reflecting both hope and quiet pride, and in that moment, Martha realized that every gesture, every shared smile, and every act of kindness had woven a tapestry of belonging, bridging the gap between solitude and community, and that this simple, profound connection had the power to transform her life in ways she had never imagined. The wind carried the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird, and Martha stood quietly, taking it all in, feeling the stillness of the canyon, the warmth of the sun, and the gentle presence of the twin girls surrounding her, knowing that the journey to this place had opened a path to a life touched by generosity, trust, and the quiet magic of shared humanity. The sky shifted from the soft rose of sunset to the deep indigo of early evening, and Martha Jenkins lingered on the porch, feeling the cool air settle over her skin, carrying with it the scent of sage and distant pine, mingling with the faint warmth of the sun-baked earth. Lila and Lyra Redhawk moved quietly around the yard, gathering the last of the firewood and arranging it near the small hearth, their movements deliberate and unhurried, filled with a sense of ritual and care that Martha had come to recognize as the rhythm of this place. She followed them with measured steps, her eyes tracing the contours of the rocky hills, noting the interplay of shadow and light, the way the canyon seemed to breathe, alive with subtle sounds of the desert night. The girls paused to adjust a bundle of blankets, their small hands working together seamlessly, and Martha could not help but marvel at their attention to detail, the care in each fold, each placement, as if they were tending not only to objects but to the spirit of the house itself. A soft breeze stirred the air, carrying the distant trickle of the creek and the rustle of juniper leaves, and Martha felt a gentle serenity settle over her, a sensation she had not known in years, the weight of solitude lifting slightly with each shared glance and gesture. Lila approached her with a small woven basket of dried herbs and flowers, setting it carefully on the porch railing, and Lyra offered a blanket, thick and warm, folded neatly so that Martha could take it with her when night fully descended, the simplicity of these offerings speaking volumes about trust, respect, and thoughtfulness. Martha knelt briefly, inhaling the aroma of the herbs and brushing her fingers lightly over the delicate petals, feeling a connection to the girls, to the land, and to the unspoken traditions that they carried with them. She stood slowly, brushing dust from her hands and letting the gentle light of the fading day illuminate the lines of her face, the softening expression of gratitude and wonder. The twins moved to the edge of the porch, pointing toward the distant canyon, where the last rays of sunlight caught the tips of the rock formations, turning them a glowing amber, and Martha followed their gaze, feeling the expansiveness of the landscape and the quiet promise that it held. The air grew cooler as evening deepened, and Martha wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, the texture soft and reassuring, a tangible reminder of the generosity and care that had welcomed her into this new space. Lila spoke softly, her voice barely rising above the whisper of the wind, sharing a simple story of their father and the land he had tended, and Martha listened closely, absorbing the rhythm and cadence, the quiet wisdom embedded in each word. Lyra added a gentle comment, a reflection on the ways the canyon had provided for their family for generations, and Martha felt herself drawn into the flow of their lives, understanding that her presence here was both a gift and a joining, an unspoken acceptance that bridged years of isolation with the warmth of newfound companionship. As darkness deepened, the first stars appeared overhead, twinkling faintly in the clear desert sky, and Martha inhaled deeply, tasting the cool air and feeling the pulse of the land beneath her feet, the steady heartbeat of the canyon and the house and the small figures who had brought her here, weaving together a quiet harmony of generosity, trust, and the unfolding promise of a home. Night had fully settled over the canyon, the sky a deep indigo sprinkled with countless stars that seemed to shimmer in quiet celebration, and Martha Jenkins stood at the threshold of the cabin, her eyes tracing the familiar contours of the hills and the soft glow of the moonlight reflecting on the jagged rocks. Lila and Lyra Redhawk moved beside her with a serene grace, carrying small lanterns that cast gentle, dancing circles of light across the porch and the surrounding ground, their steps deliberate and unhurried, as if each movement was part of an ancient rhythm that Martha was only beginning to understand. The air was cool and carried the mingled scents of sagebrush, pine, and the faint warmth of the day lingering in the earth, filling Martha with a calm that seemed to settle into her bones. She took a slow, steady breath, feeling the tension of the long journey and the solitude of her past days ease with each inhale, and she noticed how the twins' faces reflected quiet pride and trust, a mirror of the connection that had grown between them over the course of the day. They led her gently down a narrow path of stones that had been arranged carefully, guiding her to a small clearing where the soft light of the lanterns mingled with the silver glow of the moon, revealing a circle of carefully placed blankets, baskets of simple food, and small objects of significance that spoke silently of welcome, care, and shared tradition. Martha knelt briefly, touching the smooth surfaces of the stones and the soft edges of the blankets, feeling the intention and thoughtfulness behind each placement, understanding that this was more than hospitality. It was an invitation into a rhythm of life built on respect, trust, and the quiet power of generosity. The twins remained close, their small hands occasionally brushing against Martha's as they adjusted the blankets and baskets, their eyes meeting hers with gentle confidence, conveying reassurance and an unspoken bond. In the distance, the canyon whispered with the soft rustle of leaves and the faint murmur of the creek, a lullaby of the land itself that seemed to harmonize with the unspoken cadence of their hearts. Martha rose slowly, her gaze sweeping the circle of light, the arrangement of the clearing, and the faces of the girls, and she felt a deep swell of gratitude and wonder, realizing that her lonely journey through the harsh lands had led her to a place of connection and belonging. Lila spoke softly, her voice carrying the weight of quiet wisdom. "This place is for those who walk gently," and Lyra nodded, adding only a soft affirmation, her tone filled with reverence, reinforcing the significance of the space and the trust extended to Martha. The wind shifted gently, ruffling their hair and carrying the mingled scents of the canyon, the earth, and the herbs arranged around them, and Martha took it all in, letting the sensations, the light, and the presence of the twins fill her senses and her spirit. She understood that every small act of care, every thoughtful gesture, and every quiet moment of attention had created a tapestry of home and trust, weaving together her past struggles with a future rich in connection, safety, and the simple, profound magic of shared humanity. She stood in the center of the clearing, the blankets at her feet, the lanterns casting a warm glow across the soft shadows. And for the first time in many years, Martha felt fully present, fully seen, and fully welcome, the quiet miracle of the day unfolding around her in every gentle movement, every deliberate placement, and every word unspoken yet deeply understood. The first hint of dawn touched the canyon walls with a soft amber glow, and Martha Jenkins stood quietly on the porch, feeling the gentle shift of temperature as the night gave way to morning, the air crisp and carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and warm earth. Lila and Lyra Redhawk moved beside her, their small hands brushing over the porch railing as they adjusted lanterns and blankets one final time, preparing the space with the care and attention of those who understand the meaning of home. Martha inhaled deeply, letting the scent of pine and desert grass fill her lungs, and felt a profound sense of peace settle over her, the quiet magic of shared trust and kindness embedding itself into her very being. The girls led her slowly down a winding path toward a small grove of juniper and wildflowers, the sunlight dancing through the branches and illuminating the subtle patterns of petals and leaves, casting gentle shadows across the soft soil. Martha paused to kneel beside a cluster of blossoms, letting her fingers brush lightly over the delicate petals, feeling the resilience and beauty of life in even the most unexpected places, a reflection of the journey that had brought her here. Lila spoke softly, her voice carrying the weight of generations. Every step you have taken has led you here, and Lyra added a quiet affirmation, the words gentle yet powerful, echoing in the stillness of the canyon and reverberating within Martha's heart. The clearing opened before them, and Martha noticed the small arrangements of baskets, blankets, and simple offerings that the girls had placed, each item deliberate, each gesture a reflection of care, consideration, and unspoken gratitude. She felt the rhythm of the land and the pulse of shared intention in every movement, every small detail, and understood that the acts of generosity and thoughtfulness she had received were not just gifts, but invitations into a life filled with connection, trust, and possibility. The soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird punctuated the quiet, creating a harmony that mirrored the calm in Martha's own chest, a steady heartbeat of belonging that she had not known for many years. She moved carefully among the blankets, touching the smooth edges, the soft textures, absorbing the effort and attention woven into each placement, and felt herself becoming part of the ongoing story of this place, a story of quiet miracles, shared humanity, and the subtle power of kindness. As the sun climbed higher, spilling warmth across the canyon, Martha looked to the girls, seeing their pride and hope reflected in their dark eyes, and she smiled, a slow, genuine expression that conveyed gratitude, understanding, and the quiet acknowledgement that her life had been transformed by their care. The wind shifted, ruffling hair and leaves, carrying with it the scents and sounds of the canyon, and Martha stood at the center of the clearing, fully present, fully accepted, and fully aware of the quiet miracle of this moment, the culmination of trust, generosity, and the gentle unfolding of a home that had been built not through walls or possessions, but through the patient, deliberate, and heartfelt gestures of those who understand the meaning of giving without expectation and receiving with grace. The morning light spilled fully across the canyon, illuminating every crevice and contour of the rugged landscape as Martha Jenkins stood at the edge of the porch, breathing in the crisp air and feeling the gentle warmth of the sun on her face. Lila and Lyra Redhawk moved beside her, their small hands adjusting the lanterns and blankets one last time before they stepped back, allowing Martha to take in the view, the quiet expanse of desert stretching beyond the cabin with its mix of red rock, scrub brush, and the winding silver thread of the distant creek. Martha knelt briefly to touch the soft petals of the wildflowers at her feet, the colors vivid against the muted browns and grays of the canyon floor, and felt a deep sense of gratitude for the small miracles that had brought her here. The girls spoke softly, their voices blending with the gentle whisper of the wind, telling stories of their father, the land, and the traditions they carried, each word a thread weaving Martha more firmly into the fabric of this new life. She listened, her eyes tracing the patterns of sunlight and shadow across the canyon, noticing how the light caught on the rough textures of rock and the gentle curves of the plants, each detail a testament to the resilience and beauty of the land that mirrored the quiet strength she had discovered within herself. The twins led her to a small circle where blankets and baskets of food had been arranged, a simple but meaningful space that invited rest and reflection, and Martha sat, feeling the texture of the blankets beneath her hands, the warmth of the morning sun, and the subtle fragrances of herbs and earth surrounding her. She glanced at Lila and Lyra, their faces glowing with pride and quiet satisfaction, and understood that the acts of thoughtfulness and care she had received were more than gestures. They were expressions of trust, welcome, and the enduring power of human kindness. The wind stirred the branches above, carrying a faint rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird, and Martha felt a rhythm to the land, a pulse that echoed the gentle cadence of her own heartbeat, connecting her to this place and to the lives of the children who had guided her here. She rose slowly, brushing dust from her hands, and allowed herself to take in the panorama of the canyon, the cabin behind her, the soft light playing across every surface, and the quiet presence of Lila and Lyra standing nearby, watching with attentive eyes. Martha realized that the home she had found was not built of walls or possessions alone, but of care, attention, and shared humanity, and the understanding settled in her chest like a gentle flame. As the sun climbed higher, filling the canyon with warmth, she breathed deeply, tasting the fresh desert air, feeling the steady pulse of life in the earth beneath her feet, and knowing that her journey through hardship and solitude had led her to this quiet miracle of belonging, connection, and trust, a life transformed not by grand gestures or sudden fortune, but by the steady, enduring power of kindness, patience, and the unspoken bonds that now tied her to the canyon, the cabin, and the small figures who had welcomed her into a new beginning.